Welcome to another episode of AIWC. Today, CC and I are just really excited to bring you some information on some fine tuning and some of the things that we have come across over the course of, would you say, about a month or so, CC?
I would say.
Let's just dive into talking a little bit about fine tunes. One of the things that I want to discuss is some of the things that we look at when we're looking to create a fine tune. At the base, what is a fine tune? So, a fine tune is, say, I have a novel, and in that novel, I want to extract maybe the whole manuscript, whether it is a novella that's maybe 35,000 words, or it could even be a 60,000 word novel, or even a long novel of about 115, 120,000 words. We want to show you today how to take your written work and create a draft of that content by evaluating the work for story elements, not only for the story elements and your style of writing, but we also want to focus on other aspects of writing that will help an LLM or an AI write prose for you that mimics how you write, right down to if you don't use, say, dialogue tags like the he said, she said, it will mimic that for you. One of the big things for me was having as in the middle of a sentence, like a coordinating conjunction. And that just drove me nuts every time we generated with AI, or even those AI-isms like Willow Creek and we're in this together. So having a fine tune on your writing, it will actually look at areas where you might repeat phrases. So instead of seeing Willow Creek or we're in this together, if you have certain phrases or words that you use consistently in your writing, those will actually show up in your LLM that you fine tune. Cece, would you like to add some additional information on that?
Not yet. I'm just ready to jump into this.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a second here to actually pull that up. On screen, what you see is actually a spreadsheet. It is one that I have up inside of Google Docs. Now, why do I have these steps set up this way? Because this is a process that I like to follow. Now, I do want to be sure to mention that when I began to look at fine tunes, I reached out to Elizabeth Ann West because she kept saying, "Hey, you've got to do a fine tune. You got to check this out." So I went in, I did watch some of their videos to get an understanding of how they were doing it within Rexy. And we can always do another video after this one to show you how you can do fine tunes in Rexy. But today, because we've had so many people asking in the AIWC Discord, how to create it without using, say, Novel Crafter or Rexy. How can I put together my fine-tuned content? How can I draft my information? That's one of the things that CC and I want to focus on today. One of the things that I will tell you straight up, make sure that you are using your writing. If you have pre-AI writing that is yours 100%, and it's at least a 35,000 words or more, then definitely feel free to fine tune that. Now, I have worked with another individual who fine tuned a collection of short stories because he's a short story writer. And that individual actually loves what the fine tune did for his short stories. So if you write short stories, novellas, or novels, this process will still work for you. Step one, you want to make sure that you go into Chat GPT 4. I do prefer 4 because version 4 of Chat GPT actually drills down a little bit better when we are looking at some of the story elements of your novel. I recommend that you take your Word document of your novel, flip it into a PDF so that you can load that into Chat GPT 4. So let's talk a little bit more about step one. What are we going to be doing? As you can see, I have quite a bit of information in here that CC and I scrubbed over, information that we are looking at as far as what kind of framework do we want? What kind of plot structure? We want to look at the characterization. We want to look at the setting and world building. We want to look at the themes and those underlying messages. So, again, this is what I want to see whenever I am evaluating my body of work. And if you see anything in these prompts you feel does not apply to your book, you can always make changes. You can add content, remove content. But again, this is what CC and I found that when we were evaluating our works, what worked for us. And again, as you can see, it has everything right down to the dialogue, the pacing, the genre specific elements. It talks about POV, it talks about the reader's experience. We want to have all this content when we're evaluating our body of work. One of the things that I can do here is I can go ahead and grab this information, my prompt, and I'm going to go ahead and go into chat and let's create a brand new chat. I've already copied my prompt, but now I'm going to go ahead and grab my one obsession for the Mary Tudor dockets. I'm going to drop that in,
Mira,
and that's my whole manuscript. Did you say something?
I just wanted to add a side note, guys. Doesn't have to be a PDF. You can also do a Word document.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Now, I did find that if I have, say, 100,000 plus words and I try to use a Word document, sometimes it will not take it, but it will almost always take the PDF for a longer body. But definitely, like Cece said, plug in your Word document. If it tells you that it's too long, then flip that into a PDF. Here again, as I stated, I have step one. I want to evaluate the writing of one of my pre AI written works. What can you tell me about this novel or novella using the framework below as a guide? This is all the information that we talked about earlier, as far as the setting, the world building, the themes, the voice, the point of view. It's all the information that we would like to have it actually take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Let's see what information it's going to pull up. You notice that it was reading the document. Here it's letting me know what my plot structure is for the novella, and it did identify it as a novella. It's letting me know the characterization of my characters. It's giving me the narrative voice. Now, I can do this for the whole book, or I can use that same prompt and go chapter by chapter if I really want to tighten the information for my body of work. Again, we can do that either at the whole book level or we can do that at each chapter level. Now, one of the things that I want to show you is step one. If I come down and look at my spreadsheet here, I want to know where I might want to put my step one. Now, it is optional to put it in the system input area, but I almost always put it in the user input area because I like the information that it imparts. Will it hurt to have it in both areas? No, I've done that. I've had it in both areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back into ChatGPT 4. I'm going to copy that information, take it into my spreadsheet, and notice I double clicked inside of the cell and I just pasted my information in there. Now I know that I have that step one in there. Notice how I say for prose that fits the style and voice. I like to have that up at the very top. And if I want to add something above that, but I have a hard time maybe getting into that cell to put it up there, I can actually hold down control on a keyboard and hit enter a few times, and it gives me additional space. So I'm telling this is my sample set. I'm saying for prose that fits the style and voice, and then I'm going to put all the information in there that I want the LLM to have. Now, if you don't want to send across your title, then by all means, filter that out. You can remove that information. You can change your character names. Whatever information you want to impart or change, again, that is entirely up to you. So again, I took the information from here. I primed the system by giving it my manuscript. I've asked it to evaluate. So now let's go to step two.
Hey, Mira,
Step two, yeah, go
one
ahead.
second before you go to step two. Back on step one, where you pasted, go up. There you go. Up right there. Do you see where it says under user input optional? I don't think it's optional under user on that first box where it says optional step one. I think it's only optional in system input. Am I right?
I prefer to have it here. Now, I have had LLMs do well for me without it. But again, I do prefer to have it in there. So, I mean, we could change this here and we could say to paste step one here. It's not going to hurt anything.
No, because if it's optional in both, then someone might not put it in either, not knowing that it's
That's true.
necessary in at least one of them.
But I do prefer it here. Now, you can
Yeah.
put it in both, but I do prefer it in the user input. Good point. Let's look at step two. So, in step two, we're going to ask ChatGPT 4 to convert and wrap the content for the book, which is One Obsession, into the framework below and then write it in JSON format. Now, again, you can do this across the full book or for each individual chapter. I'm going to go ahead and grab all of this information and I'm going to take it straight into chat and I'm going to ask it to give me this information again. Now you'll notice that some of this information repeats a little bit, but it drills down a little bit more. Now, this is a generic literary evaluation framework. And because it's generic, that means that it can be used across multiple genres. Now, notice here how it gives an example for a historic romance. This is just because it is an example of what we might be using. But because I've already primed the system for the thriller, it's going to automatically fill stuff in for the thriller. So let's go ahead and grab that information. So as you can see, it is putting it in the JSON format. Under the description, it says generate a psychological thriller. And this one is actually revolving around a blind person. Now, if I want to continue this series, I would leave that it revolves around a vision impaired individual. If I wasn't doing that, then I would ask chat to go ahead and remove the elements of Mary and make it something that would be standard across all thrillers. But if I want to continue, say, the series for Mary, and I want it to specify or focus on her as a character, then I would leave this prompt as is with the JSON in place the way it is. So again, here, I'm definitely going to copy it and use just specifically for Mary because I'm going to use this LLM when I write more on her story. Or I could ask chat to please remove the character specifics. Now, I asked it to please remove the character specifics, and I'm going to say for Mary. And her vision impairment, and make this a framework for thrillers. And I'm going to just say generic. And that's one of the ways that you can get around that. If you truly want your LLM to be for all types of thrillers, then you would want it to create something generic. If you want it to be specific to your book so that you can continue the series, then you would go with this first option, or you would go with the second option, which is a generic, which generates a narrative that weaves together suspense, intrigue, and danger, focusing on a protagonist caught in a web of deception and peril. So again, decide what kind of LLM you want. Thoughts on that one, Cece?
Not really. Well, I will stress one thing. Mira
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, don't be that guy. Don't use other people's work to create a voice. Be original. If you want to write like someone else, learn how to do it yourself. Write your own book and then upload it to this. Please do not upload someone else's work. That's just not cool. And the second thought is we wish that this would be a one button push to create a fine tuned. It's not. There's going to be several steps that you have to go through, and all of these are equally important to getting that successful prose that you want at the end.
I want to piggyback on what CC just said. Make sure that it is your writing. Now, for me, I have noticed that pre AI writing works best for me because it takes out those AI isms. Now, Cajun Heat, I did a lot of editing on that. I took out a lot of the AI isms and I layered my voice over it when I generated that inside of pseudowrite. And because I used the LLM within pseudowrite, just like if I had used ChatGPT 4 or had gone into Playground, it had AI-isms. And you can't really get away from that, whether you are using Jasper or, say, Novel Crafter or any of the other platforms that you write with today. If you're using just straight up GPT-4 or any of the other LLMs, unless you fine tune your model, you're going to have those AI-isms. Willow Creek is almost always going to be a town or some name of a business. You're always going to have the let's do this together for romance or we're in this together. Because if you're using those LLMs, it's part of their training data that they had back when everything was scraped and they used the public domain bodies of work, which generally are older bodies. So, again, consider if you are using an AI generated body of work that you want to train an LLM with, if it has things in it that you don't like the AI-isms, or maybe there's specific sentence structure that you do not like, then make sure you edit all of that out before you actually use that as your data set. Because again, whatever you put into your data set for your training, that's what's going to direct your LLM. Step 3 that I had up on screen said to describe the writing style of this fiction novel or novella, describe the writing style and story elements to assist in future AI prompts to generate fiction words similar to the sample. The sample is actually the novel, and I'm going to go ahead and send that off. And again, if you copy this and you don't want to send, say, the title of your body of work with your sample, then you would just say the writing style can be described as suspenseful. You would just completely remove any information about your book title.
Including from the document itself, your Word document or your PDF, because chat will
Yeah.
pull from that.
Yeah. And as you can see, I put mine in just straight up 100% all the information, title, everything, just so that you get a good idea. Now, step 3. Notice step 3 is here in system input. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here. And I just put in that whole paragraph. And notice how I have information where it says to write in the dark mafia, gritty, edgy genre. So I'm going to copy that. And that's phrasing that I use. It is a placeholder for me to realize that I need to write something additional up here. What I'm going to state here is to write, and I'm going to tell it not mafia. I'm going to ask it to write in the crime/thriller, gritty, edgy genre. I could even use psychological thriller if I wanted to, but I do want to state that in the system input, I'm saying to write in the crime/thriller, gritty, edgy genre. If there is additional information that you want to instruct the LLM to do, then that is where you would put your information.
So basically,
Now,
you have to have a spreadsheet that they create of their own that says system input in the first column, user input in the second column, and assistant input in the third column, right?
yes,
Okay. And then they fill it in just as you're filling it in with all the stuff that you're pasting and or writing.
that is correct. And I do recommend that you do this because it keeps you organized. So you notice that I do have the areas bolded that you're going to put inside of your spreadsheet. I found that it tends to work a little bit better whenever I do that. Now, we've already done steps 1, 2, and 3. Let's go to 4. Now, 4 is a step that you might be familiar with because we've done a video on how to actually capture the information on generating prose that fits the style and the voice. Now, you could use 40 words or you could leave that open ended if you want to. Let's go ahead and take that into chat. Again, you can leave it 40 words or you can just ask for a prompt, and either way works. I've done both. Let's go ahead and ask it, and we'll do both of them so that you can see the difference. So, again, it's looking at the writing style. It is talking about how the author employs vivid descriptions and sensory details to create an immersive experience. It talks about the dialogue. It also states to generate prose in a similar style, considering the following prompt. Notice how it says create a suspenseful narrative centered around the protagonist. Now, that helps me over there in that first column to know exactly what to tell the LLM. I removed the 40 words on that one and I got a little bit more information. Or if you want to really condense it, then it will give you something more of a prompt. I could take this little prompt right here, I could copy that, and I could go back into my spreadsheet and right here where I have the information down here to write, I could add that information to give it additional context. I also have this information here. Now, do I want this information here? There might be parts of it that I want to pick out, or I might want to go here to generate prose in a similar style. Consider the following prompt. I want to grab this information here. And remember, the step that we are in right now is 4, and it states to go ahead and paste that information in that first column A, and I'm pasting that in now. Again, it's optional to put your step 1 here. You can if you want to. It's not going to hurt anything. But like CC was saying, definitely put it in your column B. So we've already done 1 through 4. We still have step 5 right here to complete. So let's go up and let's take a look at step 5. We have done videos on how to grab the information on the genre and the style of voice. We have used this prompt information to prompt style and genre inside a pseudo-write. We inside of their story Bible, or we've also used it in Novel Crafter. I've actually used it inside of Brexy. So this prompt works really well when you're writing prose, but we're going to take it a step further and we're going to use this prompt to help us with our fine tune. Let's go ahead and copy that and let's instruct it to write that information for us as well. Now, again, I am doing this at the whole book level. So it's basically taking chapter 1 through chapter 25, and it is giving me just a basic overview of the book. If I wanted to drill down further, then I would go ahead and do it for each one of my chapters. So I might do it for the whole book as a whole, and then add some of that information in. And then I might even go specific and do some of these prompts for chapter 1, for chapter 2, for chapter 3, because each chapter is going to focus on something different. So you have to decide, do you want it to give you general or broad information about your book, or do you want to drill down into your chapters? Let's go ahead and go back. And step 5 is right up at the top. And at this point, I could go in and plug that information. And in order to do that, I could, if I'm going to use the same information, I could scroll down and use that for all of those lines for my sample set. Now, here under the assistant input, that's where you're actually going to put your individual chapter. I'm going to use 1 row per chapter. So let me go ahead and pull this over to show you. I'm going to go into chapter 1 and I'm just going to scroll all the way down until I hit the end of chapter 1. And basically all I'm going to do is input that information for every single chapter. And I'm going to do that until I hit chapter 25. Now, in the interest of saving time, I actually loaded all my chapters earlier, and this is all the same information that we had earlier about our book here,
This is
our
what it's
user
gonna look like,
input.
right? This is gonna
Mhm.
be what it looks like when you're all done with entering system inputs, user inputs, and assistant input, right?
That is correct. And then you can see that my whole chapter is in here. So all the way down to chapter 25.
Miss Lynn or Nicole, y'all have any questions thus far? We want to make sure that it's very complicated. I know, and it's got a lot of details, but I want to make sure that we're staying on track and keeping everybody up to speed on the process. Y'all good?
Well,
Yes, I'm all
it's
good.
a lot of steps, but if you go step by step at a time, it's
Yes.
pretty straightforward.
Okay, good. Good.
One of the things that Cece and I had a lot of problems with was, okay, how do we take our Excel or all of this information that we compile? How do we turn that into a JSON-L? Well, I can definitely go into ChatGPT 4 and I can say, hey, turn this information into a JSON. But it doesn't really do a JSON-L, which is a JSON line, very well. So we kind of racked our brains. We started looking all over the internet and I know that Novel Crafter has a way that you can go in and through Novel Crafter, as long as you are, I guess, a member or set up a profile, you can go in and use their JSON-L generator for LLMs for fine tuning. And you can input the same information, your system input, your user input, your assistant input for every single line. And Rexy does that as well. Rexy gives you the ability to input that information in their system as well. And with both systems, it was a lot of copy and pasting. And that leaves a lot of room for error, at least for me, because man, let me tell you, after doing like, what was it, 79 chapters for one of the books, because it was so long, CC, that my finger was cramping and I was having to copy and paste every single line for system input, every line for user input, for the assistant input. So we're talking like 70 times three. That's how many times I had to copy and paste. That's a lot of copy and pasting.
Yeah.
CC was also doing that as well. So
Yes.
we, yeah, we were trying to find a way to make it easier. And let me tell you, that was not an easy feat. So because we kept trying to find a way to do it, we tried really hard to see what we could get set up. Well, Cece and I, we talked to one of my children and we said, hey, um, we're having to copy and paste, and what can we do? And so, of course, my child said, well, you could create, you could do some coding and throw it together, put it on a website. And we're like, yeah,
Right.
that's going to take me forever to learn.
Hold on,
So
Mary. Hold on, Mary, just a second. Because I want to
mhm,
make sure everyone's on track with what happened. Because one minute we're talking about spreadsheets, and the next minute we're talking about JSON-L. And you might be
uh-huh.
wondering, like, what's the deal? Why are we talking about spreadsheets? And then suddenly we dump to JSON-L. Because you need JSON-L for the fine-tune creation in OpenAI. So we had to have a converter. We tried all the converters online. And then just like Mira said, we dropped it in one of her kids' laps. And now show us what you got, Mira.
So give me just a second here.
While you do that, I'll say it was such a project testing all those converters and having each and every one of them fail. And it led to a lot of frustration on our part because we absolutely had to have JSON-L in order for this to be able to create the fine tune in OpenAI.
What caused the failure?
We could not figure that out. I mean, we used every single converter that we could find. We would try, manipulate, look at what the errors were, trying to, you know, backtrack to what created the error. And we absolutely had no clue. Of course, we're not coders, we're writers. So
Yeah.
we just went back and forth and back and forth. And that was when we said, okay, maybe we should talk to someone who's a coder and let's drop this on their lap and see if maybe they can come through for us. And come through, they did. And in such a big way that all of us are going to benefit from this. I can't even stress that enough. I'm going to let you go, Mira.
Okay, so back to what we were talking about. Looking at the actual LLM evaluation, I have like 25 chapters here. Well, I'm going to copy all this information I'm only doing the 3 cells, and I'm only doing it starting from chapter 1.
So no headers, no instructions, just simply everything you put in.
Yes, so everything here, I've got my write in a crime thriller, I've got all of my steps for user input here, I have my chapters. So let me go ahead and copy this information here, and I'm going to grab my spreadsheet here. And all I'm going to do is copy that information. I'm not going to worry about anything else. I don't have to set it up. I don't have to format it. I don't have to do anything here. Now, one of the things that I do want to stress to you is that you need to make sure that you don't have any blank sections here on your spreadsheet. If you have a blank section, the tool will fail. Make sure that if
You
you
mean
are
empty
working,
cells?
no
Or
empty
empty-
cells.
Okay.
Now, does that mean that I need to put something inside a D? No. I'm just talking about from columns A, B, and C. From those columns all the way down to line 25, I should not have anything empty on A, B, and C from rows 1 through 25. I have to have content in there. Otherwise, like I said, it will fail. Think of the LLM whenever it's doing the fine tuning. It is going to actually look at the content that is converted into the JSONL. If there is a blank section in there, then you're not training your data set. So make sure you have information in every single line.
It has to start in
So,
A1. If you accidentally put it in B1 and forward, and column A is empty, and you didn't even realize that, as I did once, it
yeah,
would error out, and they upload. It would just completely error out on OpenAI.
give me just a moment to save this file. I am going to save it, and make sure that when you are saving your file, that you are saving it with a name that you remember, and that you are saving it to an area that you know where to get it, whether it's your documents, your desktop, your downloads. Just make sure that you know where it is being saved to so that you can go back and pull that information up. Now, I saved it as Thriller, and I have it down as an XLSX. Now, one of the things that we want to show you is, again, it was so manual using the information. And Rexy was great for me to be able to use the LLM to convert the information. But there was a lot of copy and pasting in there. Same thing with some of the other areas that we found. So, again, when we were talking to one of my children and said, hey, we need a way to be able to figure out how to convert. So one of my children went in and made this site for us, and it is at marigoldwrites.github. We'll go ahead and link that in the YouTube description so that you can grab this. Now, one of the things that CC and I were laughing about is that all it takes is one, you're going to choose a file. So here's my file right here off to the side. So what am I going to do? I am going to choose my file. I am going to go into my downloads. And within my downloads, I have Thriller right here. I'm picking that. I have just loaded that. Now all I have to do is say to download my JSONL. So now that I've downloaded my JSONL, the other thing that you have to be conscientious of is how you want to name your file. One of the things that I noticed whenever I was in here is that it names it as output. So I want to change that. How am I going to identify that? Make sure that if you write nothing but thrillers and you name this thriller, well, what if you want to do 5 different books? Make sure that you're giving some indicator on which file it is, because that will help indicate what book. So here I'm going to say thriller, and I'm just going to call this MT because that's Mary Tudor. I'm going to say that this is book 1, version 1, and then I'm going to save that. Now, notice how I have that here. Well, let me drag this off the page because I'm going to go ahead and go into Playground, into fine tuning. Now, notice I do have some other fine tunes, but I want to create a brand new one. So I'm going to go here to create
And for somebody
and
just
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to step on you. When she
No,
said
go
she's
ahead.
gonna go into playground, that's not the playground you do the artwork in. This is open.
I do like the GPT 3.5 Turbo 1106 or zero 06. I definitely am waiting for the GPT-4. It is not available to me yet. I am on a waiting list. So once you start creating a few fine tunes, you'll notice that GPT-4 will show up down here. And all you have to do is click that and then request access and go through all of the questions just so that you can go on a waiting list. I am going to pick the GPT 3.5 Turbo 1106, and I am going to go in and drag and drop my file here, and I'm going to upload and select it. And
Oh, you guys,
mhm,
that's not the Excel file, it's the JSON.
that's
JSON.
the JSON. And I don't do anything down here to the validation data. We will have a video later on after we have fully explored that section. We'll do another video on that later, but right now we're just focusing on creating that fine tune. So let's go ahead and create it. And notice it is telling me right now that it is validating the file. It is creating the fine tuning job, and it's letting me know that right now it's validating that information. While it's doing that, take a look at how my file is written here. And I do that so that I know what file it is that I'm using. Like if I go into this one, I know that it is a dystopian. And if I go into this one, I know that this is another version of a dystopian. And I know that if I come here, that this is one of my works for science fiction. I am naming my body's work so that I know which ones they are. Looking at the fine tune, I know that it has already passed the file's validation. It moved it to the job queue, and right now, the fine tuning job has started. Now, this can take a little bit of time. Now, notice I have epochs of 4. Now, that looks at how long your data set is. If I go in and look at some of these others, like I have a 3 here, down here, I have another 4. And that's just looking at the size of my content and what I produced. So this one has an epoch of 4. We're waiting for it to finish. And one of the things that I recommend is that you create a spreadsheet so that you know what this book was actually run off of, because it's so hard to figure out when you're doing a drop down on which one of these you're going to pick. And the reason why I don't mind you seeing these is because they are unique to my API key, which means that I can only use these when I have logged into my actual Playground AI through my organizational ID and through my API key. Then I can access these. It takes a little bit of time for it to pull up.
20 to 30 minutes. Do you guys have any questions, Len or Nicole, at this stage? Because this is, and really, when this says successful and it's done, we have the fine tune and then we can move over to doing the pros. So, do y'all have any thoughts or anything? Questions?
None for me right now. I know
No,
I'll be watching this again and probably, pausing it, then doing that step.
We're waiting. Take a look at the training loss, and that is one of the numbers that you really want to keep an eye on. So under messages, you can see exactly where your fine tune is at in the queue. You can see what's happening with it right now. Currently, the fine tune job has started. We know that step 1, we had a training loss at a 2.2. We can look at step 21. We can go and look at step 31. We see that the curve has come back up and we're back up at a 2, where we had been at a 1 prior. So you can also look at the metrics if you want to take a look at some of the training loss. You'll notice that this is showing it in increments of 10. So we have 11 to 21 to 31, 41, and you get to see where some of those drops are. Now, one of the things that I read about the drops is that you definitely want to see a differential between where it started, which is here at that 2.2. You want to see some drops. Now, you will see some curves coming back up, but you do want to see some of those dips coming up and down. You want to know that the LLM is being trained and learning from your writing. Now, it was funny when Cece and I were running some of our content, she and I ran one of the same JSONL files for a science fiction body. And it was really funny because I ran it twice and my numbers ended up being like I think a 1.1, and then the other one was like a 1.2. Well, Cece ran hers, and hers was almost smack dab in the middle between my fine tunes. And interestingly enough, my first fine tune and the second one that I did has a little bit of a different voice. And it was interesting to see how I could prompt them. It still had my writing style, it still had all the different things that I like to see in writing, but my character that I created and was prompting with was a little bit different. One of them was just really sassy, spoke like a sailor, and I mean, everything out of her mouth was just, I mean, just sarcastic. And then the other one, based off of the same file, she had some sarcasm, but she was a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more tactful in
Yes,
what she was saying.
she was
But
subdued, wasn't she?
Cece, yeah, she was a bit subdued, but she was still, she was very scientific, which was funny because it's the same data set, but each one focused on something a little different. But my writing style was still there, but I loved the fact that when it came to characters, my characters were a little bit different. And I thought that that was cool because I can still prompt and have my character be anything from an intellectual to being brainy to being somebody who is sarcastic, streetwise, just with prompting. But Cece's was like right smack dab in the middle. And I loved her fine tune. She had some great prose with her. Now it is finished. And notice how it gave me my little information here. The reason why we say to create a spreadsheet with all of your fine tunes to know what voice it is, because when you go into write and you pick a fine tune, this is what you're going to pick. So I have to look for HXM. And again, if you're having to flip through like 10, 20 of these, you need to know which one you're grabbing. And you don't always remember. I definitely don't remember which one it is when I'm looking at all of these. So I like the spreadsheet because one, I can say the title of the book. I can also state what file I used and how it ties to this number here.
And we also keep a record of the temp and
Mhm.
all the settings that we alter when we start to create prose, and we keep that, and we also write what we've generated with it. So if we need to go back, say and we work together on projects. This is why it works for us to keep it together. We can go back and say, oh yeah, this is the voice that we use for this project. So we know what we need to do to recreate it. But also you'll see that there's a save function where you can save your presets, which is all the
Yes,
settings plus your fine tune. And you're going to cover all that too right now, aren't you, Mary?
definitely. So we've already run this fine tune. We know that it's completed. We know the job was successful. If I look at the metrics, I can see how far of a differential I have. I started all the way down at a 2.2 and my finished was at a 1.5, but my lowest dip, let's see. Yeah, so the lowest dip was here at the 1.5. Now I have gone as low as a 1.0 before, and that fine tune was really good as well. So again, you want to see somewhat of a differential between them. But I bet if I run this again, I will have a different training loss and the LLM might sound a little bit different, but it'll still have my story structure in place.
Yes.
So To play, you would go to your playground right here on the left-hand side, click on playground. One of the things that I like to do, I like to use the chat. Now, you could come in, you can set up an assistant through beta. You can do the complete with the legacy. I like to use the chat. And one of the things that I do is under the system prompt, I put some specific information in there. Here, I like to give information on what kind of genre, how to write it. If I have a character list that has specific information in it or world building, I might put that here under the system. And then under here, under the user, this is where I will put my story beat. Now, this is where I was telling you, you have to know which one you're grabbing because, see, I could grab Turbo, GPT-4. None of those are my fine tunes. But if I scroll down here, I know that all of my fine tunes are here. And I would have to go back and try to figure out which fine tune was it. So here, I have to go back and say, okay, well, which one was it?
Go check
Well,
them.
yeah.
Sorry.
So if you don't remember which one it is, you have to go back.
But if you have it in your spreadsheet, you don't have to hunt for it. Because once you have, I don't know, several of these, say several hundred, it's going to be too many to keep track of. It's easier to have it
Yeah.
on a spreadsheet to know where it came from, the original source, the voice that it is, the temperatures that you're using, any of the settings that you change.
Do you see it, CC?
HXM, yeah, I saw it. I saw it a second ago. Wait, you're scrolling too fast for me. Go up a little bit.
That's
No, go down. I saw it a second ago.
There it is.
Right there.
this one.
Up,
No, above it.
up.
Oh, right there. It doesn't put it in order, guys. Just keep that in mind. It was the last one that I generated, but it doesn't put it in order by how you generated. And I
Yeah.
can't really move them around.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick that one. Now, I did find that I have to play with the temperature a bit, just a little bit. But I did find that often I actually like to either use a 0.7 or a 0.8. I've gone all the way down to a 0.4, but when I was using the sci-fi one with a 0.4, CC, didn't we have like dead bodies everywhere? And there was like nowhere in the beats there were dead bodies, but our
Yeah.
girl was like tripping over bodies everywhere. And yeah, she was supposed to be collecting plant samples, but she was tripping over bodies. So again, play around with the temperature. See what works best for you. I am going to use a 0.7 for now. We can always play with it. This maximum length, this determines how many words. So if it's at 256, you're not going to get a lot of word count in there. I tend to just like to max it out because I want to see how much it will write for my first chapter. I don't do anything with the frequency penalty or the presence penalty. I have played with them, but I tend to go back to the 0 because I kind of like the pros when I don't do anything to those. Now, under the top P, I do tend to like to go to a 0.5. And this is kind of my standard where I might start working with. And again, my temperature, I might start playing with the new LLM at 0.7 or 0.8. So let me go and let's take a look. I was playing earlier with some beats, and let's take a look at some beats. So I have some beats here for Mary for that chapter 1. So I'm going to grab those beats and let me grab those. And I'm going to go back into Playground. And I actually like to put my beats up here under the user area. And I do have my date, my time. I am going to state here that this is my story beats. Oops, let me cancel that. It's very sensitive. Be careful when you hit enter. So story beats. And I am going to number this as 1. I don't have to, but I kind of like to do that. I guess it's by habit. And I am going to say chapter 1. And here I'm just going to go ahead and say Mary's, let's try third first. And let's do that past. Now, I also am going to copy some of this information. I'm going to put it down at the bottom here. And I'm going to state to write in Mary Tutors. Third person limited POV past tense, starting with beat 1. And I don't have anything here yet, but you could put something in there about your character list. You could add specifics about your character. Me, I tend to like to use some of the frameworks that I like to build. So I will often go in to ask for some form of a generic framework that I can use to guide the LLM. So in this instance, I am going to use this. I'm going to grab this information here, and I'm going to plug that in. So I have my elements here for how I want it to write.
Yay.
And one of the things that I can do is go back in here and I can actually ask it to do some of the items that I picked here. I could even go in and grab number 5. Remember, number 5 has for styles that match specific voices for the genre. I could grab that same information and go back into Playground, and I could put that information here as well. So I can either put it in my framework or I can put it here. So let's do this one first. And another thing that you might want to do is let's ask it to give us a character list. I'm asking it to provide a character list of of chapter 1 that provides attributes of the characters in the chapter. Now, if I had, say, 30 or 40 story beats, I could ask the LLM to give me a character list designed specifically for that chapter. And it would actually pull the information from the story beats from my character list, from, say, a synopsis, anything that I have inside of my chat GPT-4, and it would create a list. So here it's giving me information about Mary. It's going to give me information about Maxwell. I know that Maxwell, I have to look at the beats to see if he's in there. Notice how number 4, it says John mentioned, but not directly involved in the action. That's a great way to have somebody talk about a character and not have the character pop up. I haven't scrubbed these beats, so let's see. There's an introduction to Mary and John's relationship, a reflection on the significant job role. And let's say we can definitely do that, or we could start with the action and have her sculpting. And That way we know where she is at, and we can also, in parentheses, we could further state to orient the reader. Let's take a look and see what this will give us. Now, sometimes having the information here is enough for it to start writing prose, but if it does not write the prose for you, then you can click on the add message and you can repeat this prompt.
Girl, if you keep on stalling, I was going to say, if you kept on stalling, I was going to reach through and take control and press submit. Okay, let's see what it's going to give us.
As you can see, it is going through the content. I'm just going to pull up a new file because it's a little bit hard to see it here. I can kill this part to make it a little bit easier to look at. Notice how this sentence is not finished. If you click on add here, you can say, and I do like to go in here and grab where it left off and then do this. Just put a few little dots there and then hit submit. And it will continue where it left off.
Can you go back and get what you got so far or not yet?
I can't, and that's one of the things that I really don't like. See how I can't scroll up?
Yep.
I have to wait until it finishes. Now, I do want to warn you, once it has gone through your beats and it doesn't have enough new information to really continue, it is going to start repeating itself. So make sure that you're watching this, because if you aren't, then you could be getting a whole bunch of repeats of maybe the same phrasing or word. So let's go back up to the top and let's see how many words this is.
Are you copying and pasting these somewhere that we can't see?
I am.
Shame.
I know. Tell you what, let me grab one of these. Since we're already in there, let's just do a Google Doc.
So we can look at it?
Yeah.
Now, it costs just a few pennies to create prose. We noticed that.
Oh my gosh, yes, because you're using 3.5.
Yes, but
So, yeah.
each fine tune costs us roughly between $6 and $7, just so you know, which is really pretty cheap still.
So we're talking, we are right at, let's see, I can get this over here. That little thing is always in the way. Let me highlight that. Let me go to review. Let's do word count. We are at 2,965 words. So I'm going to move all of those, almost 3,000 words. Let's move those over here. $14 pages worth. Let's take a look. Now, notice how this one has the taglines, and that is because in Mary Mary, I do have taglines in there. And why do I have taglines sometimes in Mary Mary? Because often I will have maybe 5 to 7 characters in one scene. So I do tend to use them a little bit more here. In, say, my sci-fi name, I generally do not use any of those empty dialogue tags of he said, she said. So, again, if you have different writing styles for different genres, make sure that you're doing fine tunes for the different ones. Remember, she can't see, so we're having things like the basement door creaked open. She's hearing the thumping noises. There are heavy footsteps. The LLM actually focused on what she can hear, what she can feel, but not what she can see because she's vision impaired. Here, the air shifted, her skin prickled. It felt as if she was being watched, analyzed. So it's focusing on those other senses.
Decent prose.
Yeah, looks like it.
And I can change up my prose by changing it to 0.4 or taking it up to 1.2. So again, play with the different variations to see which you like the most.
You can also tell it before it starts about the tone of the scene.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you can influence it in that way.
Now, Cece had mentioned earlier that you can save stuff. So if I come here, I can save it and I can ask it to save this one. And maybe I'm going to call this one Mary. And now that means that anytime that I come in, I can click and it will open up to show me Mary if I save her or if I have others. I can definitely browse to look at my different presets that are saved.
And this is really
So,
handy if you're doing like a series, right? Where you want to use the same voice,
yes,
writing voice.
most definitely. Here's a dystopian one where I have a character list and I know that she's a Sith L. Sterling, I have beats for her. I have it set to a 7 also. I have a 0.5. So here again, I ran my beats. I said write prose for chapter 1. And here's my prose for Sterling.
I would think you'd also be able to how we save our presets when you create a fine tune. If you since you can't name it the fine tune itself, you can't change that. Just have it blank still. So before you generate anything, maybe save that. Like, okay, this is the dystopian fine tune. Save that as your preset might help a little bit better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's also already in there
See?
too. Don't forget it's already in the thing. But yeah, it doesn't
So,
have a describer.
and I can go back and forth. I can bring up Mary or I can bring up Sterling.
Yeah.
And if you look, let's see, let me grab Sterling here. And let's go back into so this is the page that I was on earlier. Let's take a look at this is Mary. So let's create a new one. Give me just a minute here.
While you're doing that. So also on that far left-hand side on the playground, say you're writing a Scottish Highland romance, you can put a list of vernacular or the type of spellings that you want to see in there. Because I prefer what I call soft Highland romance or light Highland romance. Like I don't get too crazy with having the vernacular in the narrator's tone. I just like it in the dialogue, and I only want it sprinkled here and there, not enough to take a reader out of the story having to figure out what the heck I'm writing. So you could put vernacular in there too.
Yeah. See how many words that is. I'm just going to open up one of my listing here. Let's just add a new chapter here. And see what that word count is. So for the dystopian, it was just one run by itself was 1,600 words. And is that a little easier to see, guys?
Yeah.
So that's with the dystopian. And then if we go in and take a look at let's go in and look at the other one that I have up. So we could go in and use the same beat. So do we want to use the preset for Mary and maybe change the tone? We could actually make it historical if we wanted to. We could ask it to write in a different POV. So again, think about what you're wanting and what kind of story you're wanting to generate. Now, I could come down here and I could remove, maybe I don't want what I had already done. Maybe I want to remove that. Notice how I'm hitting the little minus here and I'm removing everything up to the beats. Maybe I want to change my tone. Maybe I want to go to a 0.4 and see what that'll do for me.
Or make it a Regency cozy or Victorian
Yeah,
cozy.
we could definitely turn her into a historic. So we could definitely do that. Now notice, now under 4, notice how much shorter it is. Look at the short sentences. And this is, I guess, one of the reasons why I don't really particularly care to go to the 0.4.
Yeah, it just doesn't give you enough narrative.
Right. Now, for the sci-fi, when I was using the sci-fi one, going down to the 4 on hers gave me a lot of information, but that's when dead bodies were showing up everywhere. So again, play with it because what may work for one LLM may not work for another. Now notice how at a 0.9, I am getting quite a bit of information here. So don't be afraid to play with the content. Thoughts, questions?
I'm good. Anybody?
That looks great. It's exciting.
Thank you. This was very interesting to watch. So hopefully I can play with it soon.
And we're going to be providing the link to the website.
Nicole, what do you? Sorry about that, CC. Didn't mean to step.
You're good. Keep going.
Nicole, what do you have on your plate to record next? Because I know that you're putting out some videos too. So what's on the agenda for your next video?
The next one, what I'll be doing today is to help pseudo-write beginners. So I'll be doing a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And then I will be diving back into working on my dark mafia romance and showing everybody how I planned that out and started.
Very nice. Miss Lynn, what about you? What are you going to be working on?
Yeah, because I forgot to hit record the other day. I need to get my editing video done, and then I need to get a publishing one done.
Oh, nice. Well, we will definitely link both of your YouTubes in our description so that people can go out and check out your videos. So, Cece, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and I want to thank everybody for coming out today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We're going to have to do a roundtable on this because there's going to be questions. Just a little bit of a reminder. This video should explain everything clearly, but I want to encourage y'all to figure out ways to do things and to problem solve so that poor Mira isn't assaulted too much on Discord with individual questions. And again, we're going to do a roundtable. That way you can bring your questions to us. And we thank you for joining. And don't forget to ring the bell and follow and like us and show us all the love. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.